The air in Ouagadougou hung thick with dust and secrets. Moussa Diallo sat at the corner table of Café Kilimanjaro, rolling a glass of bissap between his palms, leaving condensation rings on the worn wooden surface. The red hibiscus drink reminded him of blood. His mouth tasted of metal and betrayal. The café buzzed with the evening crowd, merchants closing deals, students debating politics, and the occasional foreigner trying to blend in. In the background, a kora player's fingers danced over the 21 strings, weaving melody and memory together in the traditional Mandinka way. But Moussa heard none of it. His ears were tuned to the door, waiting. When the Frenchman entered, Moussa recognized him immediately. Jean-Pierre Duval moved with the calculated confidence of someone who believed borders were merely suggestions. His cream linen suit remained crisp despite the Sahelian heat, his silver-streaked hair perfectly styled. He ordered a coffee in flawless French tinged with a Parisian accent before scanning the room with pale blue eyes that missed nothing. "Monsieur Diallo," he said, sliding into the seat across from Moussa, "a pleasure to finally meet in person." Moussa said nothing, letting the silence stretch between them until the Frenchman grew uncomfortable. It was a small power, but Moussa would take what he could. "Your reputation precedes you," Duval continued, undeterred. "President Traore's most trusted advisor. His right hand. The keeper of his secrets. And yet here I am," Moussa finally responded, his voice low and steady, "meeting with you." The bitter irony was not lost on either man. For 10 years, Moussa had served President Ibrahim Traore with absolute loyalty. From humble beginnings as a university student protesting colonial influence, to becoming the architect of Burkina Faso's economic renaissance, Moussa had believed in Traore's vision. A West Africa free from neo-colonial control. A nation that owned its resources and determined its own destiny. "Here you are indeed." Duval's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Shall we dispense with the pleasantries? Time is valuable for both of us." Moussa nodded once, sharply. "My principals are prepared to offer $5 million, Duval said, lowering his voice. "Untraceable. Half deposited into your Swiss account tomorrow. Half upon completion." "Completion," Moussa repeated. The word felt like ash in his mouth. "You mean Traore's removal?" Duval waved his hand dismissively. "Political change is inevitable. President Traore's policies regarding foreign mining interests are problematic. His nationalizing efforts threaten decades of established business arrangements. The uranium, the gold." "Our uranium. Our gold," Moussa interrupted. "Of course," Duval smiled thinly. "Semantics. The point remains, certain parties wish for a more cooperative government. You are positioned to facilitate this transition. Your access to security protocols, to the president's schedule, to the loyalties within the military." He let the implications hang in the air. Outside, the muezzin's call to evening prayer floated across the city. "Allah is great. Allah is merciful." Moussa wondered if Allah was also forgiving of what he was contemplating. "And my family?" Moussa asked. This was the heart of it after all. "Your wife and daughters will be granted immediate asylum in France. New identities. The best education for the girls. A comfortable life. My principals understand the sacrifice you're making for your country's long-term stability." Moussa nearly laughed. The audacity of this man, speaking of sacrifice and stability while plotting a coup to plunder Burkina Faso's resources. But Moussa's options had vanished 3 weeks ago when his youngest daughter Fatima's kidnapping had ended with a single bullet-riddled finger delivered to his doorstep. The message had been clear: cooperate or lose everything he loved. "I need certain assurances beyond money," Moussa said, leaning forward. "Guarantees that no harm comes to Traore personally. Political removal only. Exile, not execution." Duval raised an eyebrow. "Still loyal even in betrayal? How fascinating." He sipped his coffee. "I cannot make promises about outcomes once events are in motion. Revolutions can be messy. Then this conversation is over." Moussa moved to stand, knowing it was a bluff but holding to it nonetheless. "Sit down, Monsieur Diallo," Duval said softly. "We both know you have no choice. But very well. My principals will make efforts to ensure Traore's physical safety, provided he doesn't resist. Now, shall we discuss the operational details?" For the next hour they did just that. Military checkpoints to be compromised. Security codes to be altered. Which generals could be bought and which would need to be neutralized. The precise timing of Traore's movements between the presidential palace and his ancestral village for the upcoming harvest festival. With each word, Musa felt pieces of his soul crumbling away. He had joined Traore's movement as a young idealist, believing they could build a truly independent Burkina Faso. Now he was selling it all away to keep what remained of his family alive. When they finished, Duval slid a burner phone across the table. "For secure communication only. Memorize the number, then destroy this after our meeting." Musa pocketed the phone, already feeling its weight like a stone. "One last thing," Duval said, his tone suddenly casual. "I understand your grandmother was a griot. A keeper of stories." Musa stiffened. His grandmother Jamila had been more than that, a respected elder from the old traditions before Christianity and Islam had fully taken root. How did this Frenchman know such a personal detail? "My principals are thorough in their research," Duval explained, reading Mouse's surprise. "Didn't she teach you the old proverb? A hyena cannot change his spots, nor a traitor change his fate." "You misquote," Musa replied coldly. "The saying is about leopards, not hyenas." "Ah, my mistake," Duval smiled. "Cultural nuances can be so tricky." He wasn't misquoting, Musa realized. He was sending another message: "We know everything about you. Even your family history. Even your childhood." After Duval departed, Musa remained at the table, staring into his now empty glass. The kora player had switched to a mournful tune about a hunter who became the hunted. The synchronicity wasn't lost on Musa. His phone, his regular phone, buzzed with a message. Meeting moved to 7 p.m. President wants full economic briefing. Aminata. Aminata Konate, Traore's chief of staff and Mouse's former lover from their university days. Another complication in a life suddenly full of them. Musa paid his bill and stepped out into the warm night. The stars above Ouagadougou shone with fierce clarity, the same stars his ancestors had used to navigate trade routes across the Sahel for centuries. Tonight, Musa felt lost beneath their ancient light. As he walked toward the presidential compound, the weight of $5 million and the lives of his wife and remaining daughters balanced against the future of his nation, Musa felt the presence of something else walking beside him. His grandmother's spirit, judging him with eyes that had seen the French colonizers come and go and come again in new guises. "What choice do I have, Nana?" he whispered to the night. The night, in its wisdom, offered no answer. President Ibrahim Traore's office smelled of leather, sandalwood, and power. Unlike many of his predecessors who had embraced European extravagance, Traore had insisted on furnishing the presidential palace with locally crafted furniture, artwork from Burkinabe artisans, and textiles woven in the country's traditional patterns. The massive desk where he now sat had been carved from a single Irako tree by master craftsmen from Bobo de Lasso. "Musa, you look troubled," President Traore observed as Musa entered. At 57, Traore retained the physical presence that had made him a formidable military leader before turning to politics. His closely cropped silver hair framed a face marked by both determination and the weight of leading a nation perpetually balanced between poverty and possibility. "Just tired, Mr. President," Musa replied, setting his briefcase on the conference table. The economic projections took longer than expected. This wasn't a lie. He had spent hours ensuring the forecast numbers would show exactly what Traore needed to see to justify the next phase of nationalizing the gold mines, a move that would further antagonize the foreign interests represented by men like Duval. The irony cut deep. "Sit, my brother," Traore gestured to the chair beside him rather than across the desk, a small but significant intimacy that made Mouse's betrayal sting even more sharply. "Before we begin with numbers, tell me about your family. How is Aisha coping?" The genuine concern in Traore's voice made Mouse's chest tighten. Since Fatima's kidnapping, the president had personally assigned additional security to Mouse's family and ordered the National Intelligence Service to make finding the responsible parties their highest priority. "She's managing," Musa said carefully. "The grief comes in waves. The girls help distract her. And you? How are you managing?" Traore leaned forward, his dark eyes searching Mouse's face. For a terrifying moment, Musa felt transparent, as if Traore could see straight through to the burner phone in his pocket and the Swiss account numbers memorized that morning. "I focus on work," Musa deflected. "It's all I can do." Traore nodded slowly. "I understand. But remember what the elders say, the man who cannot tend his own fields cannot help others with their harvest." It was exactly the kind of traditional wisdom Traore was known for weaving into his governance, part of why the people loved him. He governed not just as a president but as a village elder might, with proverbs that connected modern challenges to ancestral wisdom. Before Musa could respond, Aminata entered with a tray of tea and a stack of additional reports. Her elegant frame draped in a vibrant yellow boubou that complemented her dark skin, she moved with the confidence of someone who knew precisely her value. "Gentlemen," she acknowledged, setting down the tray. "The cabinet members will join in 30 minutes for the full briefing." Her eyes lingered on Musa a beat longer than necessary. They had been careful around each other for years, maintaining professional distance after their relationship ended when Musa married Aisha. But lately, since Fatima's kidnapping, Aminata had been watching him differently, with concern yes but also with something that felt dangerously like suspicion. "Thank you, Aminata," Traore said, pouring the tea himself, another departure from protocol that demonstrated why his people saw him as different from other leaders. "Will you join our preliminary discussion?" "If you'll have me," she replied, taking a seat across from them. The three of them had formed the core of Traore's inner circle since the beginning of his political ascent 15 years earlier. Musa with his economic expertise, Aminata with her political instincts, and Traore with his vision of a truly independent West Africa. Together they had navigated coup attempts, droughts, international pressure, and the complex tribal politics that had fractured so many other African nations. And now Musa was about to destroy it all. "The mining consortium has made another offer," Traore began, stirring honey into his tea. "Triple the previous concession payments if we abandon the nationalization plan." "They're desperate," Aminata noted with satisfaction. "They see what's happening in Mali and Guinea. The old arrangements are crumbling." "They're also dangerous," Musa said, the words escaping before he could consider them. "We should be careful not to push too hard, too fast." Traore and Aminata both looked at him with surprise. Musa had always been the most aggressive advocate for complete nationalization. "The people are ready," Traore said carefully. "The infrastructure is in place. The technical expertise has been developed. Why hesitate now when we are so close?" Musa scrambled to recover. "Not hesitation, Mr. President. Strategic caution. Our intelligence suggests increased activity from foreign agents. Perhaps we should strengthen our security measures before making the final move." It was a calculated suggestion, one that would seem prudent while allowing Musa to insert the security changes Duval had requested. "Always the careful one," Aminata said with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Though this is new coming from you. Perhaps losing a child has made me more aware of vulnerabilities," Musa replied, leveraging his tragedy as a shield. He hated himself for it even as he did it. Traore's face softened immediately. "Of course, my friend. Your caution is noted and appreciated. We will review the security protocols." He turned to Aminata. "Arrange a meeting with General Ouedraogo tomorrow." "Already scheduled for 10 a.m., she replied. "Excellent." Traore turned back to Musa. "Now show me these economic projections. I need ammunition before facing the cabinet." For the next 20 minutes, Musa presented fabricated numbers that would justify Traore's plans while setting the stage for the coup. Each slide, each graph, each projected outcome was meticulously designed to lead the president exactly where Duval's principles wanted him: isolated, overconfident, and vulnerable. As he spoke, Musa felt as though he were standing outside his body, watching himself betray not just a president but a friend, a vision, a country. The practiced words flowed while his mind screamed in silent protest. When the cabinet members began arriving, Musa excused himself briefly, claiming a need for fresh air. In the private courtyard outside Traore's office, where flame trees dropped their scarlet blossoms onto ancient stones, he finally allowed himself to confront the magnitude of his actions. He withdrew the burner phone from his pocket, tempted to smash it against the courtyard walls. Instead, he sent a single text to the program number. "Meeting extended. Security review tomorrow 10 a.m. with military. Phase 1 in progress." The response came seconds later. "Acknowledged. Remember your daughter's remaining fingers." Musa closed his eyes, feeling the night breeze against his face. In his mind, he saw Fatima as a child, laughing as she counted stars with her small fingers. The same fingers now being threatened one by one. Difficult call? Aminata's voice startled him. How long had she been standing there? Had she seen the message? "Just checking on Aisha," he lied, slipping the phone away. "She doesn't sleep well these days." Aminata moved closer, her jasmine perfume bringing unwanted memories of their past. "Musa, you know you can trust me if something's wrong. Beyond Fatima, I mean." The genuine concern in her voice nearly broke him. For a wild moment he considered telling her everything: the kidnapping, the threats, Duval, the $5 million, all of it. Instead he straightened his shoulders. Nothing's wrong that finding my daughter won't fix. We should get back inside. Of course. She turned to go, then hesitated. One thing, why did you change the economic growth projections for the eastern provinces? Last week's numbers were higher. Mouse's blood froze. The eastern provinces were where most of the gold mines were located. The adjusted numbers were subtle, designed to suggest that nationalization would yield slightly less benefit than previously thought, creating just enough doubt to delay implementation. New data from the field, he replied smoothly. Extraction costs are running higher than initial estimates. She studied his face. Interesting. The mining ministry sent updated figures showing the opposite. I was going to bring it up in the meeting, but I wanted to check with you first. It was a trap and they both knew it. Musa struggled to maintain his composure. I haven't seen those figures, he said carefully. We should compare notes after the meeting. Yes, she agreed, her eyes never leaving his. We should. As they walked back toward the presidential office, Musa felt the walls of his carefully constructed deception beginning to crumble. Aminata had always been the most perceptive of Traore's advisors. If she was already questioning the numbers, how long before she questioned everything else? The burner phone felt heavy in his pocket. So did the weight of his choices. Inside, President Traore was standing before a map of Burkina Faso, pointing out resource-rich regions to his assembled ministers. His voice carried the passion that had inspired a generation of Burkinabe citizens. For too long our ancestors' bones have been ground to dust while others grew wealthy from our soil, he was saying. The path forward is clear. What God has placed beneath Burkina Faso belongs to the children of Burkina Faso. The ministers applauded. Musa joined them automatically, clapping for the vision he was secretly working to destroy. Traore caught his eye across the room and gave a slight nod. Acknowledgement of their shared journey, their shared dream. Musa returned the nod, ignoring the voice of his grandmother in his head, reciting another proverb. The hand that digs a trap should remember it will someday need to reach into a hole. That night, Musa dreamed of his grandmother Jamila. In the dream they sat together beneath the great baobab tree in his ancestral village, just as they had when he was a boy. The massive tree, centuries old, spread its branches against the sky burning with sunset colors. Jamila's face was deeply lined, her blind eyes milky with cataracts, but her voice remained strong as she spoke the old stories. Listen, child, Dream Jamila said, her fingers weaving invisible patterns in the air. The tale of Sundiata tells us that a man cannot escape his destiny. He can only choose how he meets it. What if destiny offers only impossible choices? Musa heard himself ask. Jamila laughed, the sound like dry leaves rustling. There is always another path. The spider did not build its web with only 2 threads. She reached out with startling accuracy for a blind woman and pressed something into his palm. Looking down, Musa saw the small wooden amulet she had given him when he left for university in the capital. A protection charm carved with symbols older than Islam, older than Christianity, belonging to traditions the missionaries had tried to erase. You stopped wearing it, she accused. You stopped listening to the ancestors. I grew up, he protested. I learned about economics, about politics. And forgot about wisdom? She shook her head. The young sapling thinks it has nothing to learn from the ancient baobab, until the winds come. The dream shifted. The baobab tree transformed into the presidential palace. Jamila was gone, replaced by President Traore, blood streaming down his face. Why, my brother? Traore asked, his voice thick with betrayal. Was it worth the price? Musa woke with a gasp, his nightshirt soaked with sweat. Beside him, Aisha stirred but didn't wake. Her sleeping pills, prescribed after Fatima's kidnapping, ensured she remained deep in pharmaceutical oblivion. He slipped from bed and went to the veranda overlooking their garden. The night was alive with insect chorus, the air heavy with approaching rain. In the distance, lightning illuminated the hills beyond the city. The dream lingered, his grandmother's words echoing. There is always another path. But what path? If he betrayed Duval and his principles, Fatima would die, if she wasn't dead already. His other daughters might follow. If he betrayed Traore, his nation would fall back into neo-colonial exploitation, and thousands would suffer as resources were drained away from infrastructure, education, healthcare. He was one man caught between monsters. Musa returned to the bedroom and opened his closet. In the back, behind his suits and ceremonial attire, was a small wooden box his grandmother had given him. He hadn't opened it in years, having embraced Islam and left behind what the imams called superstition. Inside lay the amulet from his dream, a small wooden disc carved with the ancient symbols of his people, strung on a leather cord. Beside it was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, covered in his grandmother's careful handwriting, a transcription of one of her many stories, one she had insisted he keep. Musa unfolded it, reading by the dim light filtering through the curtains. When the great drought came to the land, the village faced a terrible choice. Sacrifice the eldest child of each family to the river spirits, or watch everyone perish from thirst. The elders debated, the mothers wept, the fathers raged. Finally the village griot came forward. "I will go into the spirit world myself and negotiate with the river gods," she declared. "Impossible," said the chief. "No living person may enter the spirit world and return." "Then I shall become something between living and dead," replied the griot. For 7 days and 7 nights, the griot sat beneath the baobab tree without food or water, chanting the ancient songs. Her body withered, but her spirit grew strong. On the 8th day, when the villagers thought her dead, she rose and walked to the dried riverbed. There she offered neither a child's blood nor her own life, but something far more precious, 1/3 of all her remaining years and all the stories she had yet to tell. The river gods, moved by such a sacrifice, allowed the waters to flow once more. But they warned that should the village ever forget the price of their salvation, the drought would return 7-fold. Musa stared at the paper, trying to decipher his grandmother's message across time. She had insisted he keep this particular story, though as a young man focused on modern education, he had dismissed it as primitive folklore. Now, in the darkest hour of his life, he wondered what wisdom lay hidden in the tale. What was she trying to tell him? The answer came not in words but in a sudden clarity. There was indeed another path, one that required a different kind of sacrifice. Musa carefully replaced the amulet and letter in the box, but then, after a moment's hesitation, removed the amulet and placed it around his neck. The wooden disc felt cool against his skin. He moved to his home office and opened his laptop. Working swiftly, he accessed encrypted files he had compiled over years as Traore's economic advisor. Evidence of continued foreign exploitation, of bribes, of assassinations arranged to look like accidents, of environmental catastrophes covered up. Duval and his principals weren't the first to try controlling Burkina Faso's resources through manipulation. They were merely the latest in a long line stretching back to colonial times. And Musa, with his economist's obsession with data, had been documenting it all. By dawn he had assembled a comprehensive dossier, names, dates, bank transfers, communications. Including everything he knew about Duval's current plot, though carefully omitting his own involvement. As the call to far prayer echoed across the city, Musa knelt on his prayer mat, the first time he had prayed properly since Fatima's kidnapping. He asked not for forgiveness, he had not earned that yet, but for strength. When he finished, the path forward was clear. Duval's principals expected him to provide access codes and security details at the 10 a.m. meeting with General Ouedraogo. They expected him to lay the groundwork for Traore's removal. Instead, he would set in motion something entirely different. Musa dressed with unusual care, selecting his finest embroidered boubou rather than his normal Western suit. He fingered the amulet beneath the fabric, drawing comfort from its presence. As he prepared to leave, Aisha emerged from their bedroom, her eyes still clouded with sleep and medication. "You're wearing the traditional clothes?" she noted with mild surprise. "Is it a special occasion?" "In a way," he replied, going to her and taking her hands. "Aisha, listen to me carefully. Today things may change very suddenly. If they do, you'll receive a message from Aminata. When that happens, take the girls and go to my sister's house in Jibbo. Don't argue, don't pack, just go." Fear flickered across her face. "Musa, what's happening? Is this about Fatima?" He held her gaze steadily. "It's about all of us. About what kind of future our children will have, in what kind of country. You're frightening me. I'm sorry." He kissed her forehead. "Trust me one last time." Before she could question him further, he left, carrying both his regular briefcase and a smaller one containing copies of his dossier, a flash drive and his grandmother's letter. The morning air smelled of rain and wood smoke. Ouagadougou was waking up, market women arranging their goods, motorbikes weaving through traffic, children in school uniforms walking together in groups. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that forces from outside were, once again, plotting to determine their destinies. Mousa's driver waited beside the government car. As they drove toward the presidential palace, Musa sent 2 messages from the burner phone. The first, to Duval, security meeting proceeding as planned. Need confirmation of family safety protocols. The second, to a number few people knew existed, a secure line to President Traore's personal phone, bypassing official channels. Meeting at 9 a.m. instead of 10. Just you and me. Matter of national survival. The response from Traore came immediately, I'll be there. Duval's response arrived as they passed the central market. Focus on your task. Your family's security depends on your performance today. No assurances. No guarantees. Just another threat. Moussa closed his eyes, remembering the griot in his grandmother's story, the one who offered a third of her remaining years and all her future stories to save her people. Some prices were worth paying. The presidential palace security had been enhanced since the last coup attempt 3 years earlier. Moussa passed through 4 checkpoints, each more rigorous than the last. At the final one he surrendered his phone. His regular phone, not the burner, as was standard protocol for high-level meetings. The burner remained hidden in an inner pocket of his boubou, along with a small digital recorder. President Traore was waiting in his private study rather than the formal office, a sign he understood the sensitivity of Moussa's request. The room was intimate, lined with books on African history, economics, and political theory. Many of them included Traore's own handwritten notes in the margins. He was a leader who believed in continuous learning. This is unexpected, Traore said without preamble as Moussa entered. Especially the timing. The general will be here in less than an hour. That's why we needed to speak first, Moussa replied, remaining standing though Traore had gestured toward a chair. Mr. President, Ibrahim, I have a confession to make. Traore's expression changed, alertness replacing casual concern. Go on. 3 weeks ago, after my daughter Fatima was taken, I was approached by foreign interests. They want to prevent the nationalization of the mines. They offered me $5 million to help remove you from power. The words came out in a rush, each one lifting a small portion of the weight Moussa had been carrying. Traore's face hardened. And you agreed. It wasn't a question, but Moussa answered anyway. Yes, they have Fatima. They've already sent me her finger to prove they're serious. They threaten my other daughters, my wife. So you chose your family over your country. Traore's voice was cold. No, Moussa said quietly. In the end, I chose a third path. He opened the smaller briefcase and removed a flash drive, placing it on the desk between them. Everything is here. Names, accounts, communications. The entire network of foreign interests that has been working against Burkina Faso's independence for decades. Including details of the current plot. Traore didn't touch the drive. Why are you telling me this now? Why not go through with their plan if your daughter's life is at stake? Because they would never stop with you, Moussa said simply. They would install a puppet, reverse all our progress and return us to effective colonial status. My daughters would grow up in a Burkina Faso owned by others. And I would have been the one who sold their birthright. He paused, feeling the weight of his grandmother's amulet against his chest. There must be another way to save both my family and our country. Traore finally took the flash drive, turning it over in his fingers thoughtfully. Your grandmother was Jamila Diallo, wasn't she? The griot from Fata Gourma? Surprised by the question, Moussa nodded. She once told a story at a cultural festival when I was a young officer, Traore continued. About a hunter who caught a lion cub and raised it, only to be devoured when the lion grew strong. She looked directly at the French ambassador when she told it. A small smile played at his lips. I never forgot that. She would have liked you, Moussa said, his throat tight. And what would she say about your situation now? Traore asked. That there is always another path. The spider does not build its web with only 2 threads. Traore nodded slowly. So what is this third path you propose? Moussa took a deep breath. We spring the trap but on our terms. I feed them exactly what they expect. Security codes, your schedule for the festival visit. But we prepare accordingly. Go on, Traore said leaning forward. Their contact, a Frenchman named Jean-Pierre Duval, believes I'm fully compromised. But if we can track him while making him think his plan is proceeding, he could lead us to where they're holding Fatima. And the broader conspiracy? The evidence on that drive should be enough to expose their entire network. Not just here but in Mali, Niger, across the region. With the right international pressure. International pressure, Traore interrupted with a bitter laugh. From the same Western powers who benefit from our exploitation? Not from governments, Moussa clarified. From their people. Public opinion still matters in democracies. If ordinary citizens in France, in America, knew how their corporations operate here, the pressure would build from within. The president was silent for a long moment, studying Musa with eyes that had seen too many betrayals to be easily trusting again. "And why shouldn't I simply have you arrested right now?" he finally asked. "Turn you over to General Ouedraogo as a traitor? Because you need me to maintain contact with Duval. To make him believe his plan is working." Musa met Traore's gaze steadily. "And because, despite everything, you know I love this country as much as you do." Outside the study, they could hear the palace coming alive with the day's activities. Staff members moving through corridors, security radio chatter, the distant sound of vehicles arriving. Time was running short. Traore stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city he had sworn to serve. "If we do this, there are no guarantees we'll find your daughter alive." "I know," Musa said quietly. "And you would risk her life for this chance?" "Not just her life. Mine too." Musa touched the amulet beneath his clothes. "In my grandmother's story, the griot offered 1/3 of her remaining years to save her village. I am prepared to offer all of mine if necessary." Traore turned back to face him. "That is either the statement of a patriot or the empty words of a desperate man trying to save himself." "Test me and find out," Musa replied. For several heartbeats, the two men regarded each other, president and advisor, former friends now standing at a crossroads of trust and suspicion. Then Traore reached a decision. "General Ouedraogo is loyal to me, not to the office of the presidency," he said. "We'll bring him into this plan but no one else. Not even Aminata." Musa hesitated. "We may need her help eventually. Perhaps. But for now, this remains between the three of us." Traore's tone made it clear this was non-negotiable. "You will proceed exactly as they expect. Feed Duval the information. Make him believe you're fully committed. And Fatima? I'll put our best intelligence people on tracking Duval discreetly. If your daughter is alive, we'll find her." Traore's expression softened slightly. "I promise you that much, whatever comes after." The burner phone in Mousa's pocket vibrated. Both men froze, eyes locked on the pocket of Mousa's bubu. "That will be them," Musa said. "Checking that I'm in position for the meeting." Traore nodded. "Answer it. Let the game begin." With trembling fingers, Musa withdrew the phone. The message from Duval was terse. "Security codes? Meeting started?" Under Traore's watchful gaze, Musa typed his response. "Meeting delayed 30 minutes. We'll have full access codes by 11 a.m. "Good," Traore said, reading over his shoulder. "Now we wait for General Ouedraogo and we set our own trap." General Seydou Ouedraogo arrived exactly at 10 a.m., as precision was his hallmark. At 55, he carried himself with the straight-backed discipline of his 30 years in the military. His dark uniform was immaculate, the medals on his chest earned rather than bestowed through political favor. What surprised Musa was that Aminata arrived with him. "Mr. President," Ouedraogo saluted formally before acknowledging Musa with a curt nod. "Diallo." Traore shot Musa a warning glance before addressing the general. "Thank you for your punctuality, Seydou. I see you've brought the chief of staff." "I requested to join," Aminata said, her eyes moving between the three men, sensing the tension. "The security review affects operational schedules. Is there a problem?" "No problem," Traore replied smoothly. "But I must ask for a brief private word with the general first. Ministerial matters. Aminata, perhaps you could show Musa the updated festival security routes? We'll join you shortly." It was a transparent attempt to separate them, but Aminata merely inclined her head. "Of course, Mr. President. Musa, shall we?" As they left the study, Musa felt Traore's eyes on his back. The president was keeping him away from the initial conversation with Ouedraogo, still not fully trusting despite Mousa's confession. Aminata led him to a small conference room down the hall, closing the door behind them. Instead of retrieving any security documents, she turned to face him directly. "What's happening, Musa?" she demanded without preamble. "First the doctored economic reports, now this tension with the president. I've known you too long not to recognize when something's wrong." The directness of her question caught him off guard. Aminata had always been perceptive, one of the qualities that had drawn him to her years ago. Now that perception made her dangerous. "Politics is always tense before major policy changes," he deflected. "The nationalization plan has everyone on edge." "Don't insult my intelligence," she said quietly. "Is this about Fatima?" The mention of his daughter's name sent a physical pain through Mousa's chest. "What do you mean?" "The kidnappers. Have they contacted you? Made demands?" Musa stared at her, momentarily speechless. How much did she know? "I've been running an independent investigation," Aminata explained, seeing his confusion. Off the books. The official search was going nowhere and I thought, well, I care about Fatima too. I care about your family. Despite their complicated history, Musa knew this was true. Aminata had remained close to his daughters even after he married Aisha, becoming something between an aunt and a second mother to them. What have you found? He asked cautiously. Connections to a French mining company, Ries du Sahel. The same company most affected by the president's nationalization plan. She watched his reaction closely. The same company where Jean-Pierre Duval serves as security consultant. The floor seemed to shift beneath Mouse's feet. Aminata had discovered in weeks what he hadn't pieced together at all, the specific corporate entity behind Duval's principles. How did you? I have sources beyond official channels, she said. People who owe me favors. People who see things. She stepped closer. Musa, whatever they've asked you to do, whatever you've agreed to, it's not too late to fix it. The burner phone felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket. If Aminata knew about Duval, what else might she know? Could she be trusted? Or was this an elaborate trap? Before he could decide, the door opened and President Traore entered with General Ouedraogo. Both men's faces were grim. Aminata, Traore said, I need to speak with Musa alone now. The general will brief you on the security changes for the festival. She hesitated, looking between them. Of course, Mr. President. As she passed Musa, she whispered, We're not finished. When the door closed again, Traore wasted no time. The general has agreed to help. We have a plan. Can he be trusted? Musa asked bluntly. Ouedraogo snorted. That's rich coming from you. Enough, Traore cut in. We need each other now. Seydou, tell him what you've arranged. The general leaned against the conference table. I've mobilized my most trusted unit, off the official grid. 20 men who would die for Burkina Faso without question. They're preparing to shadow the president's movements during the festival while maintaining complete communications silence. And Duval? Musa asked. We've identified 3 possible locations where they might be holding your daughter, based on property records connected to their front companies. Ouedraogo pulled out a map, pointing to marks in different colored ink. Here, here, and here. My men will be ready to move on all 3 simultaneously once we confirm. How do we confirm? Musa pressed. You, Traore said simply. You need to extract that information from Duval. Make him believe you need to see your daughter before completing your side of the bargain. He'll never agree to that. Then make him believe you need proof she's still alive, Ouedraogo suggested. A video call. Something we can trace. Musa considered this. It might work, but we'll need specialized equipment. If they're using encrypted communications. Already arranged, the general interrupted. French equipment, ironically. Captured from mercenaries last year. The plan began taking shape. Musa would continue feeding Duval information, culminating in the supposed complete security breakdown during the president's visit to his ancestral village for the harvest festival in 3 days. Meanwhile, Ouedraogo's team would prepare to move against all possible locations where Fatima might be held. Against all possible locations where Fatima might be held. What about Aminata? Musa finally asked. She knows about Duval, about the connection to ries du Sahel. She's been running her own investigation. Traore and Ouedraogo exchanged glances. How much did you tell her just now? Traore asked. Nothing. But she suspects I'm compromised. Then we keep her out of this, Ouedraogo declared. The fewer people who know, the better. She could be an asset, Musa argued. She has sources we don't. Or she could complicate everything, the general countered. The president and I will handle Aminata. You focus on Duval. Traore studied Mouse's face. Do you have feelings for her still? Is that clouding your judgment? No, Musa said firmly. But I know her value. Ignoring good intelligence because we don't trust the source is how nations fall. And bringing too many players into a delicate operation is how operations fail, Ouedraogo retorted. She stays out. That's final. Before the argument could continue, the burner phone vibrated again. All 3 men tensed. Answer it, Traore ordered. The message was longer this time. Delay unacceptable. Proof of commitment required immediately. Send Eastside security rotation schedule or receive another package from your daughter. Another finger, Musa translated, his voice hollow. What do I do? Traore and Ouedraogo conferred silently with a look before the general nodded. Send the real schedule, Traore decided. The risk is minimal since we're changing rotations tomorrow anyway. It buys us time and credibility. Musa retrieved the information from his briefcase and transcribed it carefully into a message. His finger hovered over send as a moment of doubt seized him. If any harm comes to my men because of this, Diallo, Ouedraogo said quietly, treason will be the least of your crimes. I understand, Musa replied and pressed send. Duval's response came quickly. Better. Full security protocols for festival by tonight or consequences follow. Phone call at 5 p.m. for additional instructions. He's getting impatient, Traore observed. That's good. Desperate men make mistakes. Or become more dangerous, Musa countered. Either way, we're committed now, the general said, straightening his uniform. I'll coordinate with my team on the 3 locations. Mr. President, we should review the festival security changes immediately to ensure we can control exactly what information Diallo feeds to them. Traore nodded. Musa, return to your office as normal. Prepare whatever documentation Duval expects. We'll communicate through secured channels only. As Musa gathered his belongings, the president added, and Musa? If you're contemplating any other paths besides the one we've agreed upon, remember, I've already ordered a protective detail for your wife and remaining daughters. For their safety, of course. The implicit threat wasn't lost on Musa. He was as much a hostage now as Fatima. I've made my choice, he said evenly. I stand with Burkina Faso. We'll see, was all Traore said. By mid-afternoon, Musa had compiled the security protocols Duval had demanded, a comprehensive breakdown of the president's protection detail for the upcoming festival, complete with personnel assignments, communication frequencies and evacuation routes. Half of it was genuine, giving the document credibility. The other half contained subtle misinformation that would channel any attack exactly where General Ouedraogo wanted it. His office door opened without a knock, and Aminata entered, closing it firmly behind her. We need to talk, she said, her voice low despite the privacy of the office. About ries du Sahel, about Duval, about whatever you've gotten yourself into. Musa glanced at his computer screen, making sure nothing incriminating was visible. This isn't the time or place, Aminata. When then? After it's too late? She sat across from his desk, her posture rigid with tension. The president and the general are planning something. They excluded me from their meeting after you left. That's not normal protocol. They're concerned about security leaks with the festival approaching, Musa offered lamely. Standard precautions. Don't lie to me. The hurt in her voice was palpable. We've known each other too long for that. Musa considered his options. Traore and Ouedraogo had explicitly ordered him to keep Aminata out of the plan. But his grandmother had always said that wisdom sometimes meant knowing which rules to break. What do you know about Fatima's kidnapping? He asked carefully. Exactly what connections have you found? Aminata's eyes narrowed at the shift, but she answered. 3 weeks ago, unusual activity at the ries du Sahel office. Private security contractors arriving from Paris. Then communications between their office and a compound outside the city, a property owned by a shell company that traces back to their parent corporation. The compound, is it in Sector 27? Near the old French military base? She looked surprised. Yes. How did you know? It was one of the 3 locations Ouedraogo had identified. Confirmation from an independent source strengthened the probability. Aminata, I'm going to tell you something against direct orders from both the president and General Ouedraogo. If they discover I've told you, the consequences will be severe. I would never betray your confidence, she said immediately. It's not about betrayal. It's about keeping you safe. He hesitated, then made his decision. Fatima's kidnappers contacted me. They offered $5 million to help overthrow Traore and stop the nationalization. Aminata didn't look shocked, merely grimly vindicated. And you agreed? Initially, yes. To buy time. He met her eyes directly. This morning I confessed everything to the president. We're setting a trap for Duval and his people. So that's what the meeting was about. She processed this quickly. Why keep me out of it? Traore doesn't fully trust you. Or me for that matter. Musa lowered his voice further. But I need your help. You have sources they don't. Sources that might help us find Fatima before it's too late. What exactly do you need? Confirmation about the compound in Sector 27. Anything about security, layout, personnel. And verification about 2 other possible locations. He wrote the addresses on a slip of paper and slid it across the desk. Aminata tucked the paper into her pocket without looking at it. I'll see what I can find out. But Musa, are you sure Traore has your best interests at heart? Or is he just using you to catch Duval? The question struck uncomfortably close to Mouse's own doubts. Does it matter if it helps us find Fatima and protect the country? It matters if you're being set up as the scapegoat. Her gaze was steady. You betrayed him even if you reversed course. That's not something a man like Ibrahim Traore forgives easily. Before Musa could respond, his computer chimed with a secure message from the president, a request for an immediate update. Simultaneously, the burner phone in his pocket vibrated. I have to handle this, he said. Aminata stood. I'll work on the information you requested. But Musa. She paused at the door. Watch your back. With everyone. After she left, Musa checked the burner phone first. The message from Duval was brief. Call moved to 4 p.m. Be alone. The timing change was concerning, a potential indication that their plan was already being compromised. He forwarded this update to Traore through the secure government channel, then responded to Duval with a simple acknowledgement. For the next hour, Musa completed the security protocol document, carefully embedding the misinformation as directed by General Ouedraogo. Throughout, his mind kept returning to Aminata's warning. Was Traore using him? Did the president intend to sacrifice him regardless of the outcome? It would be the politically expedient move. Even if they rescued Fatima and captured Duval, Musa had still considered betraying his country. His reputation would be irreparably damaged. As a scapegoat, he would serve Traore's purposes perfectly, demonstrating the president's commitment to rooting out corruption while strengthening his position on nationalization. The spider did not build its web with only 2 threads. His grandmother's words echoed again. Perhaps it was time to add a 3rd thread to this web, an insurance policy of his own. Musa opened a secure document program and began typing rapidly, creating a complete account of everything that had transpired. Fatima's kidnapping, Duval's offer, his confession to Traore, and the trap they were now setting. He included dates, times, and exact quotes wherever possible, particularly the president's implicit threat against his family. When finished, he encrypted the document with a key only he knew and sent it to 3 separate secure email addresses. Trusted journalists he had cultivated relationships with over the years, including one at Radio France Internationale. The message was set to automatically decrypt and send if he didn't enter a cancellation code every 24 hours. It wasn't much protection, but it might ensure that if he was eliminated, the truth would still emerge. At precisely 4 p.m., the burner phone rang. Musa activated the recording device in his pocket before answering. You're alone? Duval's voice sounded tense. Yes. The security protocols? Complete. I'll transmit them after this call. Good. Pause. There's been a change of plans. The operation timeline has accelerated. Musa felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. What do you mean? Our sources indicate Traore is planning to announce the final nationalization decree at the festival rather than after it. We can't allow that to happen. That's not possible, Musa objected. The legal framework isn't ready. I would know. Are you certain you would? Duval's tone was dangerous. Perhaps the president has begun to keep certain matters from his economic advisor. Perhaps he suspects something. The suggestion raised Mouse's alarm further. Had they somehow learned of his confession to Traore? I've given no cause for suspicion, he insisted. What exactly is the new timeline? The operation will proceed tomorrow night, not during the festival. This was disastrous. General Ouedraogo's preparations were timed for the festival 3 days away. The trusted unit he mentioned wouldn't be in position. The security protocols Musa had doctored would be useless. That's impossible, Musa said firmly. The security for tomorrow is completely different. The president has meetings at the ECOWAS headquarters all day. The protective detail is triple the normal size. Which is why we need updated protocols immediately, Duval countered. For tomorrow specifically. I don't have that level of detail for tomorrow's security, Musa argued, trying to buy time. I would need to access restricted systems, raise questions. Then find a way, Duval interrupted coldly. Or perhaps you need additional motivation. I could arrange another delivery from your daughter. 2 fingers this time, perhaps? Musa gripped the phone so tightly his knuckles whitened. That won't be necessary. I'll get what you need. You have 3 hours. And Diallo? This is your final test. Succeed and your daughter comes home. Fail in any way, and her suffering will be legendary. The call ended, leaving Musa staring at the phone in horror. He immediately sent an emergency message to Traore and Ouedraogo through the secure channel, requesting an urgent meeting. The response came back almost instantly. Impossible. President in diplomatic meetings until evening. Maintain cover. Follow original plan. They didn't understand. There was no time to follow the original plan. Duval's people were moving tomorrow with or without the updated security protocols. Moussa paced his office, weighing his limited options. He could try to stall Duval, claiming inability to access the security details, but that would likely cost Fatima more than just fingers. He could provide false information, but without coordination with Ouedraogo's team, that might lead to a bloodbath among the regular security forces who wouldn't be prepared. Or he could go directly to Aminata, the one person who might have both the access and the motivation to help without requiring presidential approval. His decision was made for him when his office door opened once again, and Aminata slipped inside, her expression urgent. "The compound in Sector 27, she said without preamble. My source confirmed activity there. Armed guards restricted access. And a doctor visited yesterday." A doctor? Moussa seized on this detail. Why? Unclear. But it suggests someone there needs medical attention. Fatima, Moussa breathed. If she'd been injured or was ill, that might explain the accelerated timeline. Duval's people might fear losing their leverage if she died. Possibly, Aminata agreed cautiously. What's happening? You look like you've seen a ghost. They've moved up their timetable. The attack is coming tomorrow, not at the festival. Moussa quickly explained the call from Duval. Traore and Ouedraogo are unreachable, and I have 3 hours to provide updated security protocols. Aminata processed this with remarkable composure. Then we adapt. I can get you tomorrow's security details. I helped arrange the ECOWAS meeting. But we need to warn the president somehow. I've tried through official channels. They're blocking it. Then we go unofficial. She pulled out her personal phone. Ibrahim has a private line. Few people have the number, but... She dialed and waited. After several rings, she shook her head. No answer. What about Ouedraogo? Too dangerous. If he's deliberately blocking your messages, contacting him directly could expose us. She thought for a moment. There's another option. My cousin Bakary is on the president's security detail tomorrow. If I can reach him, he can at least ensure Traore has extra protection. Do it, Moussa agreed. And I need those security protocols to send to Duval. We need to control which information he gets. As Aminata made calls and accessed the secure system for the protocols, Moussa felt a strange calm descending. The path forward was narrowing, choices simplifying. His grandmother had often said that in the moment of greatest danger, the ancestors would provide clarity. Bakary will ensure extra precautions tomorrow, Aminata reported after several tense conversations. And here are the protocols. Together, they modified the documents. Enough accurate information to be credible, enough misdirection to create an opportunity for Ouedraogo's men to intercept any attack, even with minimal preparation time. One more thing, Moussa said when they finished. The compound in Sector 27. I need to know exactly where it is. And I need a weapon. Aminata stared at him. What are you planning? A third path, he said simply. One that doesn't depend on Traore or Ouedraogo or their plans. You can't go there alone. It's suicide. Not alone, Moussa corrected. With whatever help you can provide. But I'm not waiting for official approval while my daughter's life hangs in the balance. He met her gaze steadily. Will you help me? For a long moment, Aminata was silent, weighing possibilities and consequences. Then she nodded once, decision made. The ancestors say that when the lion comes for your child, you don't ask permission to defend your family, she said quietly. I'll help you. But we do this smart, not just brave. Agreed. As the afternoon stretched toward evening, they formulated their own plan, separate from but complementary to the official operation. Moussa sent the doctored security protocols to Duval, buying time and maintaining his cover. Meanwhile, Aminata mobilized her own network. Cousins, friends, former university comrades who had remained loyal to her over the years. By nightfall, they had assembled a small team of 6 people they could trust absolutely, a rough layout of the compound in Sector 27, and 3 weapons with ammunition. Not an army, but perhaps enough to create a diversion while locating Fatima. We move at midnight, Moussa decided. When their guard will be lowest while they're planning for tomorrow. And if Fatima isn't there? Aminata asked the question that had been hovering unspoken between them. Then we fall back and reassess, Moussa said, though they both knew the likelihood of getting a second chance was slim. As their impromptu team gathered in a safe house on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, Moussa found a quiet moment alone. He removed his grandmother's amulet from beneath his shirt and pressed it to his lips. "Guide me tonight, Nana," he whispered. "Help me find the right path through darkness." The wooden disc seemed to warm slightly in his hand, perhaps just his imagination, perhaps something more. Either way, as he rejoined the others to review the final plan, Moussa felt the presence of his ancestors walking beside him. The third path lay open before him. Whether it led to salvation or destruction remained to be seen. The compound in Sector 27 crouched like a predator on the landscape, a colonial-era building surrounded by newer security additions. High walls topped with razor wire. Motion sensors. Guards patrolling the perimeter every 15 minutes. It had once been a French military officer's residence, then a corporate retreat, and now a fortress hiding secrets. Moussa lay on his stomach in the tall grass 300 meters away, studying the structure through night vision binoculars Aminata had somehow procured. Beside him, Bakary, Aminata's cousin from the presidential security detail, noted guard positions and rotations. 4 men visible, Bakary whispered. 2 at the main gate, 2 patrolling. Probably more inside. Professionals? Moussa asked. The way they move? Yes. Military training. Not local. This confirmed what they had suspected. Duval had imported foreign mercenaries rather than rely on local talent who might have divided loyalties. The rest of their small team was positioned around the compound. Aminata with 2 others at the eastern approach, 2 more at the road that served as the only vehicle access. Their plan was simple by necessity, given their limited resources. Create a diversion at the front gate, breach the eastern wall where the security seemed lightest, locate Fatima, and extract her before reinforcements could arrive. Simple but dangerous. Perhaps suicidal. But Moussa had run out of alternatives. The burner phone in his pocket vibrated, a message from Duval. Security protocols received. Proceed tomorrow as planned. Expect contact at 0900 with final instructions. So they still planned to move against Traore tomorrow. That was good. It meant tonight's focus would be on preparation, not on Fatima or heightened security. Moussa sent a quick update to Aminata, then returned to studying the compound. Something about the layout bothered him. The visible security was substantial but not overwhelming. For holding such a valuable hostage, he would have expected more. Unless, what if she's not here? He murmured. Sir? Bakary questioned. The doctor visit Aminata's source reported. What if it wasn't for Fatima? What if this is just a staging area for tomorrow's operation? It was a possibility they hadn't fully considered, blinded by the hope of finding Fatima quickly. We could abort, Bakary suggested. Wait for confirmation. No. Mousa's voice was firm. We proceed. If she's here, we get her out. If not, we may find intelligence about where they're holding her. Bakary nodded, respecting the decision despite its risks. As midnight approached, they moved into position. The night was cloudy, the moon appearing and disappearing behind racing strands of darkness, as if the ancestors themselves were manipulating the heavens to aid their mission. Moussa checked his weapon, a 9mm pistol that felt alien in his hands. He had learned basic firearms training during his mandatory military service decades ago, but had never fired a gun in combat. He prayed he wouldn't need to tonight. The signal came via a single flash of light from Aminata's position. Bakary responded with 2 flashes. The operation was go. The diversion began with a small explosion at the front gate, not large enough to destroy it, but sufficient to draw attention and create confusion. As guards rushed toward the commotion, Moussa and Bakary sprinted toward the eastern wall where a rope ladder had already been secured by Aminata's team. They scaled the wall quickly, dropping into the landscaped grounds. A guard appeared around the corner of the building, shouting in French. Bakary responded with 2 silenced shots that dropped the man before he could raise his weapon. This way, Bakary urged, leading them toward a side entrance indicated on their rough map. The door was locked but yielded to a specialized tool from Bakary's kit. They entered what appeared to be a kitchen area, cleared it swiftly, then moved deeper into the building. The interior was surprisingly ornate, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, antique furniture. The colonial splendor preserved as if to remind visitors of who truly held power. They encountered no one as they methodically checked rooms on the ground floor. The absence of personnel was concerning. Either their diversion had drawn away most of the security, or the compound was more lightly staffed than they'd anticipated. Basement, Bakary suggested quietly. If they're holding someone, it would be below. Musa nodded, and they located a door that led downward. The stairwell was dimly lit, the air becoming cooler and damper as they descended. At the bottom, a reinforced door blocked their path, clearly a recent addition to the colonial architecture with an electronic keypad lock. "Can you open it?" Musa asked. Bakary examined the lock. "Not quickly. We'd need explosives or the code." Frustration surged through Musa. So close, yet still separated from where his daughter might be held. He pressed his ear against the door, straining to hear any sound from within. Nothing. "We need to find another way," he began when a voice behind them froze them both. Or perhaps the right key. They spun, weapons raised, to find Jean-Pierre Duval standing at the top of the stairs, a pistol held casually at his side. He was alone, appearing utterly unperturbed by their presence. "Monsieur Diallo," he continued conversationally, descending a few steps. "I must admit I underestimated your initiative. Breaking into this facility is quite bold. Foolish but bold. Where is my daughter?" Musa demanded, his gun trained on Duval's chest. "Not here, I'm afraid." Duval's smile was cold. "Though I'm curious, how did you find this location?" "We were quite careful." "It doesn't matter," Musa replied. "What matters is that you're going to take me to Fatima now." Duval laughed softly. "Or what? You'll shoot me? Then you'll never find her." He gestured to the door behind them. "Besides, what makes you think that door leads to a cell? Perhaps it's simply storage. Wine cellar, perhaps. This was a Frenchman's home after all." "You're lying," Musa insisted, but doubt crept into his voice. "Am I?" Duval took another step down. "Your daughter is quite safe, I assure you. Somewhere you'll never find without my help. And she'll remain that way as long as you complete your task tomorrow. President Traore must be removed. The nationalization must be stopped." A crash echoed from somewhere above, followed by gunfire. The diversion team engaging with the remaining guards. Duval didn't even flinch. "Your little rescue party is being dealt with as we speak," he said calmly. "Though I'm surprised you brought the president's chief of staff into your conspiracy. Aminata Konate is quite recognizable, even in the dark." Ice formed in Mouse's veins. If they had identified Aminata, this entire operation was compromised. Worse, he had dragged her into a situation that might now cost her her life, or at minimum, her career and freedom. "Bakary," Musa said quietly, not taking his eyes off Duval. "Go help the others." "Sir, I can't leave you." "Go. That's an order." Mouse's tone left no room for argument. After a moment's hesitation, Bakary backed up the stairs, squeezing past Duval, who made no move to stop him, and disappeared into the upper level. "Noble," Duval commented. "Sacrificing your own safety for others. But ultimately futile." "Why are you alone?" Musa asked, sudden suspicion breaking through his fear. "Where are your guards?" "Who says I'm alone?" Duval's smile widened. "Perhaps I'm merely the distraction." The realization hit Musa too late. He spun toward the reinforced door just as it swung open from the inside. Pain exploded at the base of his skull, and darkness claimed him. When consciousness returned, Musa found himself seated in an elegant office, hands bound to the armrests of an antique chair. His head throbbed where he'd been struck. Across from him, Duval sat behind a massive desk of polished mahogany, sipping what appeared to be cognac from a crystal glass. "Welcome back," the Frenchman said. "I do apologize for the rough handling. My colleagues can be overzealous." Musa tested his restraints, zip ties, professional grade, cutting into his wrists. "No easy escape. Where are the others?" "Aminata? Bakary?" "Those who survived have fled," Duval replied matter-of-factly. "Your presidential security man proved quite formidable. He extracted Madame Konate after she took a bullet in the shoulder. Not fatal, merely inconvenient for her. Aminata was wounded but alive." The relief Musa felt was quickly tempered by the realization of his own predicament. "Now," Duval continued, setting down his glass, "we find ourselves at an interesting juncture. You've clearly betrayed our arrangement by attempting this foolish rescue. Yet I still need your access for tomorrow's operation." "It won't work," Musa said hoarsely. "Traore knows everything. I told him about your plot." For the first time, Duval's composure slipped slightly. "When?" "This morning. Before the security meeting. He and General Ouedraogo are already preparing a counter-operation." Duval was silent for a long moment, studying Mouse's face for any sign of deception. Then surprisingly he laughed. "A clever bluff, Monsieur Diallo. But if what you say were true, This compound would already be surrounded by military forces. He leaned forward. No, I think you're lying to save yourself. And rather poorly, I might add. Moussa maintained his composure despite the sinking realization that Duval might be right. If Traore had fully believed him and prioritized stopping the coup, why hadn't Ouedraogo's men been mobilized immediately? Why leave Moussa to handle Duval alone? Aminata's warning echoed in his mind. Watch your back. With everyone. Whether you believe me or not doesn't matter, Moussa said finally. You won't succeed tomorrow. And whatever happens to me, my daughter will be found. Such faith, Duval mocked. In a president who has already sacrificed you? In a system that has always bent to foreign interests in the end. He opened a drawer in the desk and removed a satellite phone. Perhaps you need a reminder of the true stakes. He dialed a number, spoke briefly in French, then turned the phone toward Moussa. The video call showed a sparse room with a thin mattress on the floor. Sitting on it, looking terrified but alive, was Fatima. Papa? Her voice cracked with emotion and fear. Papa, please help me. Fatima. Moussa strained against his restraints, as if he could somehow reach through the screen to his daughter. Are you hurt? Have they? Enough, Duval interrupted, pulling the phone away. As you can see, she lives. For now. Let me speak to her more, Moussa pleaded. Just for a moment. That depends entirely on your cooperation. Duval ended the call. Tomorrow's operation proceeds as planned. Your security protocols have already proven accurate. Our people have verified the presidential route. All that remains is for you to complete your role. And what exactly is that? Moussa asked, playing for time, trying to identify any detail that might help locate Fatima. Simply this. At precisely 10 a.m., you will use your emergency override code to disable the presidential security communication system for exactly 3 minutes. During that window, our team will access the president's motorcade. Duval's expression hardened. No heroics, no warnings, no deviations from the plan. You will be monitored throughout. If anything goes wrong, your daughter dies first, then you, then your entire family. The coldness with which he outlined these threats left no doubt of their sincerity. This was a man who had orchestrated coups and assassinations across continents, treating human lives as mere game pieces. And if I do as you ask? If Traore is removed? Then Fatima returns to you by nightfall, you receive your payment, and your family departs for France as agreed. Duval shrugged elegantly. Burkina Faso gets a new, more cooperative government. Life continues. The West maintains access to valuable resources. A reasonable arrangement all around. Except for the Burkinabe people, who would once again see their nation's wealth extracted for others' benefit. Except for the dream of true independence, crushed under neo-colonial boots. Except for Moussa's soul, forever stained by betrayal. I need proof that Fatima will be released, Moussa insisted. Not just your word. You are hardly in a position to make demands, Duval observed. But as a gesture of good faith, I'll allow you to speak with her again tomorrow, after the operation concludes successfully. He checked his watch. Now, I'm afraid we must conclude our chat. You have an important role to play in the morning, and you should be well rested. He pressed a button beneath the desk and 2 armed men entered the office. Take him to the secure room. Ensure he's comfortable but unable to communicate with anyone. At 8 a.m., bring him to the operations center. As the guards moved to untie him from the chair, Moussa made a decision. His fingers closed around his grandmother's amulet, still hanging beneath his clothes. They had taken his weapons, his phone, his dignity, but had overlooked this small wooden disc against his skin. One last question, Moussa said, looking directly into Duval's pale eyes. Do you know the story of the griot who cheated death? Duval paused, momentarily intrigued despite himself. I don't believe I do. My grandmother told it to me as a child. About a woman who offered the most precious thing she possessed to save her people. Moussa smiled faintly. Perhaps another time. Something flickered across Duval's face, curiosity perhaps or superstitious disquiet. Many Europeans who worked in Africa long enough developed a reluctant respect for its spiritual traditions. Perhaps, Duval agreed, dismissing the guards with a nod. Until tomorrow, Monsieur Diallo? As Moussa was led away to what amounted to a luxurious cell, he focused his thoughts on the amulet against his chest. His grandmother had claimed it could protect against evil spirits and open doors between worlds. He had never truly believed its power, embracing Islam and Western education instead. But tonight he would take whatever help the ancestors offered. Because tomorrow would determine not only his fate and Fatima's, but the future of Burkina Faso itself. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou in streaks of gold and crimson, as if the sky itself were bleeding. Moussa sat on the edge of the bed in his comfortable prison, having spent the night not in sleep but in deep reflection. His body ached from the previous night's failed rescue attempt, but his mind had achieved a clarity that had eluded him for weeks. There was no perfect solution that saved everyone and everything he loved. But perhaps there was a path that preserved what mattered most: his daughter's life, his country's future, his own honor. The path would require sacrifice, but as his grandmother's story of the griot had taught him, the most valuable sacrifices were those freely given. When the guards came at 8 a.m., Moussa was ready. They escorted him to what had once been the compound's wine cellar, now converted into a high-tech operations center. Computer screens displayed maps of Ouagadougou, the presidential motorcade route, and security positions. A team of operatives, European and African, all with the hard eyes of mercenaries, worked at various stations. Duval stood at the center, issuing instructions with the confidence of a field commander. He acknowledged Moussa with a curt nod. "Right on schedule. I trust you slept well?" "Well enough," Moussa replied evenly. "Excellent. You'll be stationed here." Duval indicated a communications setup with a secure laptop. "Your credentials have already been entered. At exactly 10 a.m., you will execute the communications override, creating a 3-minute window for our teams to act." Moussa examined the system. It was indeed connected to the presidential security network, a vulnerability that would need to be addressed if they survived today. "And Fatima?" he asked. "Focus on your task first," Duval said coldly. "Family reunions come after successful operations, not before." A mercenary approached Duval with a tablet, showing him something that caused a flicker of concern across the Frenchman's face. They conferred quietly before Duval turned back to Moussa. "There's been a change in the presidential schedule. A delay of 30 minutes for the departure to ECOWAS headquarters. Verify this. It could be a legitimate change, or it could mean Traore had been warned, perhaps by Aminata and Bakary after last night's failed rescue. Either way, it gave Moussa leverage he hadn't expected. Need access to the presidential calendar system, he said, projecting confidence he didn't feel. My normal access codes should work. Duval gestured to the computer. Proceed. Moussa logged into the government system, navigating to the presidential schedule. Indeed, the departure for ECOWAS had been pushed back to 10:30 a.m. More importantly, he now had a connection to the outside world, however monitored. It's confirmed, he said after examining the schedule. The delay appears to be due to an unplanned call with the French ambassador. This detail, which he improvised, caught Duval's attention exactly as Moussa had hoped. The French ambassador? That wasn't part of our arrangement. Diplomatic schedules are fluid, Moussa replied with feigned indifference. Perhaps your principals have their own channels to President Traore. The suggestion that Duval might not be privy to all aspects of the operation clearly disturbed him. Doubt was a powerful weapon, and Moussa had just planted its seed. While Duval stepped away to make calls, Moussa took a calculated risk. Under the pretense of checking security protocols, he accessed his government email and quickly composed a message to Aminata. The system would flag unauthorized access, but he might have just enough time. Compound confirmed. Fatima alive at second location. Operation proceeding at 10:30. Override codes will be used. Counter at 10:27. Till. He hit send just as Duval returned, quickly switching screens back to the presidential schedule. The timeline is adjusted, Duval announced to the room. Execution now at 10:30. All teams update accordingly. Moussa nodded complicitly, but inside hope kindled. If Aminata received his message and understood it, there was a chance. A small one, but a chance nonetheless. The next 2 hours passed in excruciating slowness. Moussa was kept at the communication station, occasionally required to verify security details or provide insight on protocol. He searched the faces of the mercenaries, wondering which of them had held his daughter captive, which had severed her finger. The rage he felt was a physical thing, a fire in his blood that demanded vengeance. But vengeance would not save Fatima. Strategy would. At 10:15 a.m., the operations center shifted into final preparation mode. Team leaders reported readiness. Surveillance confirmed the presidential motorcade was preparing to depart, now on the revised schedule. Your moment approaches, Monsieur Diallo, Duval said, standing behind Moussa's chair. Remember what's at stake. My daughter's life is not something I forget, Moussa replied, fingers poised over the keyboard. As the minutes ticked down, Moussa focused inward, centering himself with a silent prayer, not just to Allah, but to the ancestors his grandmother had honored. If ever he needed guidance from both traditions, it was now. At precisely 10:27, 3 minutes before the scheduled operation, alarms blared throughout the compound. Security monitors showed military vehicles approaching rapidly from multiple directions. "We're compromised," one of the mercenaries shouted. Burkinabe special forces on approach. Chaos erupted in the operations center. Duval grabbed Musa by the collar, rage distorting his normally composed features. "What did you do?" he snarled. "I chose my country," Musa replied calmly, even as Duval pressed a pistol to his temple. "The operation is aborted," Duval announced to the room. "Initiate protocol scorched earth. All teams withdraw to secondary positions." To Musa, he added in a deadly whisper, "You've just killed your daughter." "No," Musa countered. "I've saved her. Check your messages." Confusion replaced anger for a moment as Duval reached for his phone. His eyes widened at whatever he saw. Outside, gunfire erupted as Ouedraogo's forces engaged the compound's perimeter security. They had perhaps minutes before the building was breached. "The second location is already under attack," Musa continued. "General Ouedraogo's best unit. The ones with French equipment captured from your mercenaries last year. They're quite good at tracking satellite communications." It was a calculated gamble. Musa had no way of knowing if his message to Aminata had been received or understood, or if Ouedraogo had managed to trace the satellite call Duval had made to Fatima. But the flash of panic across Duval's face confirmed he'd hit close to the truth. "You think you're clever?" Duval hissed. "But you've merely ensured mutual destruction." He turned to his communications officer. "Order the second site to execute protocol terminal. Immediately." The blood drained from Mousa's face. "What are you doing? She's just a child." "She's leverage that has become a liability," Duval replied coldly. "In my business, liabilities are eliminated." Something in Musa snapped. With strength born of desperate paternal fury, he lunged at Duval despite the gun at his head. They crashed to the floor, wrestling for control of the weapon. Around them, the operations center dissolved into frantic evacuation as explosions rocked the compound, the mercenaries destroying evidence before fleeing. Duval was stronger, younger, trained in combat. But Musa fought with the desperation of a father trying to save his child's life. His fingers closed around Duval's wrist, forcing the gun away from his own head and toward the Frenchman's chest. "Tell them to stop," Musa gasped through gritted teeth. "Cancel the order." "Too late," Duval snarled back. "Protocol terminal is already." The gun discharged, the sound deafening in the confined space. Duval's eyes widened in shock as the bullet entered his chest. His grip on the weapon loosened, allowing Musa to wrench it free. "The satellite phone," Musa demanded, pressing the gun to Duval's head. "Where is it?" Blood bubbled from Duval's lips as he smiled through the pain. "You'll never find her in time. Protocol terminal includes incendiary devices. The site will be ash within minutes." Horror washed over Musa. "You're burning children alive for business?" "Not business," Duval coughed. "Policy. Your president threatens Western interests across the region. Examples must be made." The building shook with another explosion, closer this time. Smoke began filling the operations center as fires spread from the upper floors. The location, Musa pressed the gun harder against Duval's wound, causing him to cry out in pain. "Tell me now." Through pain-glazed eyes, Duval looked up at Musa with something like respect. "You would have made an excellent operative, Diallo. Such resolve." He coughed again, more blood spattering his lips. "The old mission, 10 kilometers east of the city. Building 3. The Catholic mission abandoned during the political unrest 5 years earlier. It made sense, isolated but with existing infrastructure forgotten by most locals." Musa stood, keeping the gun trained on Duval. "If you're lying, what will you do?" Duval laughed weakly. "Kill me again? I'm already dead. But remember this, Diallo, men like me, we're just the visible hand. The real power remains unseen. Today you win, tomorrow?" He trailed off as his eyes unfocused, life ebbing away. The smoke was thickening rapidly. Musa had to choose, stay and ensure Duval didn't survive, or try to reach Fatima before it was too late. It was no choice at all. He ran. The compound was in flames, security personnel either fleeing or engaged with Ouedraogo's forces at the perimeter. Musa navigated through smoke-filled corridors, the gun still clutched in his hand. He encountered two mercenaries who raised their weapons, but his first shot went wide, and they seemed more concerned with escape than eliminating a single Burkinabe economist. Outside, the morning air was thick with smoke and gunfire. Musa spotted General Ouedraogo directing his men from behind an armored vehicle. "General," he shouted, running toward him. "The mission compound. East of the city. They're going to burn it with my daughter inside." Ouedraogo's eyes widened in recognition. "Diallo. How did you?" He cut himself off, processing the urgent information. "Team Bravo, redirect to the old mission site east of the city," he barked into his radio. "Priority 1 rescue operation. Potential hostages and incendiary devices." "I need to go there," Musa insisted. "Now. You're a civilian?" "She's my daughter." The raw emotion in Mousa's voice broke through military protocol. After a moment's hesitation, Ouedraogo nodded to one of his officers. "Lieutenant Cohn, take Mr. Diallo to the eastern site. Full tactical support." "Yes, General." The lieutenant gestured to a military vehicle. "This way, sir." As they sped toward the mission compound, Musa clutched his grandmother's amulet, praying to any power that would listen. The wooden disc seemed to pulse with warmth against his palm. His imagination surely but comforting nonetheless. The journey took only minutes but felt like eternity. As they approached, black smoke was already visible rising from one of the buildings at the old mission. Building 3, Musa realized with horror. The military vehicle had barely stopped before Musa was running toward the burning structure, ignoring the lieutenant's shouts to wait for backup. Heat blasted his face as he approached the building, flames already consuming the wooden roof. "Fatima!" he screamed over the roar of the fire. "Fatima!" No response came from within the inferno. The front entrance was blocked by burning debris. Musa circled desperately to the back of the building, finding a smaller door not yet engulfed. Without hesitation, he wrapped his bubu around his face and plunged inside. The heat was unbearable, the smoke blinding. Musa crawled along the floor where the air was marginally clearer, calling his daughter's name between coughing fits. The building's layout was simple, a former dormitory with small rooms along a central hallway. He checked each room, finding nothing until he reached the last door. It was locked from the outside with a padlock. Through the thickening smoke, Musa could just make out a small form huddled in the corner of the room. "Fatima. I'm here." A weak cough was the only response, but it was enough. She was alive. The padlock was substantial. Musa fired Duval's gun at it once, twice, 3 times before it shattered. He kicked the door open and rushed to his daughter's side. Fatima was barely conscious, her face streaked with soot, her breathing shallow. Her right hand was crudely bandaged where her finger had been removed. She looked smaller than her 15 years, vulnerable in a way that broke Mousa's heart and steeled his resolve in equal measure. "Papa?" she whispered, her voice nearly inaudible over the roar of the flames. "I'm here, my brave girl. I'm here." Musa gathered her into his arms. "We're going home." The ceiling creaked ominously above them as the fire consumed the building's structural supports. They had minutes, perhaps less, before collapse. Retracing his path proved nearly impossible as the fire had spread rapidly, blocking the hallway they had entered through. Musa carried Fatima to a window, but metal bars prevented escape, a remnant of the mission's security measures. Trapped between fire and immovable barriers, Musa felt despair threatening to overwhelm him. Had he come so far only to die with his daughter in his arms? The amulet around his neck seemed to burn against his skin, not with the heat of the surrounding fire but with an inner energy. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory, "There is always another path." Through smoke-stung eyes, Musa spotted what he had missed before, a narrow access panel in the floor, likely leading to maintenance tunnels beneath the building. Setting Fatima down gently, he pulled at the panel with desperate strength. It resisted, then gave way suddenly, revealing a dark space below. "Fatima, listen to me," he said urgently, coughing as smoke filled his lungs. "I'm going to lower you down. It's not far. Then I'll follow." She nodded weakly, trust in her father overcoming fear. Musa lowered her carefully through the opening, hearing her soft gasp as she reached the bottom. "Papa, hurry," she called up, her voice stronger now in the clearer air below. The ceiling groaned again, more insistently. Musa began lowering himself through the opening just as a section of roof collapsed behind him, sending a blast of heat and debris across the room. He lost his grip, falling rather than climbing into the space below. Pain shot through his ankle as he landed awkwardly, but there was no time to assess the injury. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing them to crawl. Musa led the way, gritting his teeth against the pain, encouraging Fatima to keep moving as the fire raged above them. After what seemed like hours but was likely only minutes, they saw light ahead, another access point leading outside. Musa pushed through, emerging into the blessed fresh air behind the burning building, Fatima following close behind. Military personnel surrounded them immediately, medics rushing forward to provide oxygen and assess their injuries. As they were guided toward a medical transport, Musa looked back at the burning mission building, now fully engulfed in flames. Had they delayed even minutes longer, they would have perished inside. "Mr. Diallo," Lieutenant Cohn approached, his expression grave. "Urgent message from the capital. There's been an attempt on President Traore's life." Mouse's heart sank. Duval said they aborted the operation. Apparently one team didn't get the abort order. They attacked the motorcade en route to ECOWAS. The president's condition is unknown. Despite his injuries and exhaustion, Musa knew his duty wasn't finished. "I need to get to the city immediately. Sir, you require medical attention. My daughter needs care. I need to get to the president." Musa turned to Fatima, who was already receiving treatment from the medics. "I have to go, my brave one. Your mother will come for you." Fatima grasped his hand with surprising strength. "Go, Papa. Do what you must." The wisdom in her young eyes, wisdom born of suffering, nearly undid him. But there was no time for tears. "Not yet. Take me to the capital," he told the lieutenant. "Now." President Ibrahim Traore was alive, but barely. The attack on his motorcade had been swift and devastating. A precision strike that had killed 4 security personnel and wounded 6 others, including the president himself. Traore had taken 2 bullets, one to the shoulder, one to the abdomen. He was in surgery at the military hospital when Musa arrived, his prognosis uncertain. The presidential palace was in lockdown, the military on high alert. General Ouedraogo had declared a temporary state of emergency, assuring the nation via radio broadcast that the government remained in control and the perpetrators would be brought to justice. Aminata met Musa at the hospital entrance, her left arm in a sling from the gunshot wound she'd received during the failed rescue attempt. Exhaustion lined her face, but her eyes were clear and determined. "You found her," she said simply. It wasn't a question. "Yes. She's receiving treatment. She'll recover." Mouse's voice broke slightly on the last word. The physical wounds would heal, but the psychological trauma of kidnapping and torture would take longer. "How is he?" "Fighting." Aminata led him through security checkpoints to a private waiting area where General Ouedraogo conferred with military aides. "The doctors are cautiously optimistic." The general dismissed his staff when he saw Musa, his expression unreadable. "Diallo, I see you survived." Again. The implicit accusation hung in the air between them, that somehow Musa had orchestrated events to ensure his own survival while others paid the price. But Musa was too exhausted for indignation. "Duval is dead," he said simply. "Shot during the raid. But the wider conspiracy remains. His principles, as he called them. Ries du Sahel is just the visible hand." "We're aware," Ouedraogo replied coldly. "We've secured evidence from both compounds and are analyzing it now. The question remains, what was your true role in all this?" "Seydou," Aminata interjected sharply. "Musa confessed everything yesterday morning. He turned against the conspirators at great personal risk. His daughter was tortured because of it. And yet the president lies in surgery," the general countered. "The timing is convenient." Musa understood the suspicion. In Ouedraogo's position he would harbor the same doubts. "I sent a warning through Aminata yesterday. Did it not reach you?" "It did," the general acknowledged reluctantly. "Too late to prevent the attack, but in time to limit its effectiveness. The question is whether that timing was deliberate or unfortunate." Before Musa could respond, a doctor emerged from the surgical wing, still in blood-stained scrubs. All 3 turned to him expectantly. "The president is stable," the doctor reported. "The surgery was successful, but he remains in critical condition. The next 24 hours will be decisive." Relief washed over the room, though tension remained. Traore would live at least for now. But the crisis was far from over. What happens next? Musa asked the question weighing on all their minds. "We maintain the emergency protocols," Ouedraogo decided. "The public needs to know the government remains functional. Aminata, prepare a statement for national broadcast. The president is injured but recovering, the perpetrators have been identified as foreign agents, the situation is under control. And the truth, she challenged? About the mining interests, the attempted coup, the foreign interference? Partial truths for now, the general said pragmatically. Enough to calm the public without triggering international complications we're not yet ready to handle. Musa understood the caution, but his daughter's torture and his president's near assassination had stripped away his tolerance for diplomatic niceties. The evidence I gathered, names, accounts, communications, should be made public. Not just to our people but to the international community. That would be reckless, Ouedraogo objected. Without President Traore's direct authorization. I believe I can provide that, came a weak voice from the doorway. All three turned in shock to see President Traore being supported by a nurse and doctor, barely on his feet but defiantly conscious. His torso was heavily bandaged beneath a hospital gown, his normally commanding presence diminished by injury but not eliminated. Mr. President. Aminata rushed to his side. You shouldn't be standing. So the doctors insist, Traore grimaced. But I heard your voices. This discussion couldn't proceed without me. He looked at the medical staff. 5 minutes. Then I'll return to bed like an obedient patient. The doctor frowned but nodded reluctantly, helping Traore to a chair. Report, the president commanded simply, his voice weak but his authority intact. Between them, Musa, Aminata, and General Ouedraogo provided a concise summary of events. The raid on the compound, Duval's death, Fatima's rescue, and the evidence recovered. Traore listened silently, his dark eyes moving between them, betraying nothing of his thoughts. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment before focusing on Musa. You chose Burkina Faso, he said finally. Despite everything. I chose what I believe in, Musa replied. A free and independent nation. A future where my children aren't pawns in foreigners' games. Traore nodded slowly, wincing at the movement. The evidence must be released. All of it. Not through government channels but through independent journalists, both domestic and international. He turned to Aminata. You have contacts at Radio France Internationale, yes? And at Al Jazeera? Yes, Mr. President. Good. They receive everything. Let the world see how the former colonial powers still operate in Africa. General Ouedraogo looked uncomfortable. Sir, the diplomatic repercussions will be managed, Traore cut him off. But only after the truth is exposed. No more shadows. No more whispers. The people deserve to know who truly threatens their sovereignty. Musa felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. This was the leader he had believed in, the man willing to challenge powerful interests regardless of personal cost. There will be consequences, Traore continued, his gaze sweeping over all of them. Economic pressure. Political isolation. Perhaps worse. But we proceed nonetheless. He focused on Musa again. Your grandmother's story, the griot who offered her remaining years to save her village. Tell me, how did it end? Surprised by the question, Musa recalled the tale's conclusion. When the drought ended and the village was saved, the griot returned. Though she had aged decades in a single week, her voice remained strong. She gathered the children and told them, remember this price. Remember that nothing of value comes without sacrifice. And remember that our ancestors watch always. Traore nodded slowly. Wise words. We would do well to heed them. To the doctor hovering anxiously nearby, he said, My 5 minutes are nearly up, I believe. More than up, Mr. President, the doctor confirmed, moving to assist him. One final matter, Traore said as they helped him to his feet. Moussa Diallo is hereby officially appointed as Special Presidential Envoy for Resource Sovereignty. He will present our evidence to the United Nations General Assembly next month. To Moussa directly he added, assuming you accept. The offer stunned Moussa. After everything that had happened, his near betrayal, the chaos that followed, Traore was not only forgiving him but elevating his position. I'm honored, Mr. President. But why me? Traore's face softened slightly. Because you understand the cost now. The personal cost of sovereignty. And because you still chose correctly despite impossible circumstances. With the doctor's support, he began moving slowly toward the door, adding over his shoulder, besides, your economic experience will be invaluable in what comes next. The nationalization proceeds, immediately. After the president was escorted back to recovery, General Ouedraogo left to coordinate security arrangements, leaving Moussa and Aminata alone in the waiting area. Special Presidential Envoy, Aminata mused. Quite a promotion from the man who nearly betrayed his country. I don't deserve it, Moussa admitted. Perhaps not, she agreed. But Traore sees the symbolic value. The man who was offered millions to betray his president but ultimately chose his nation instead? That story will resonate across West Africa. Is that all it is? A useful narrative. Aminata studied him for a moment. No. It's also his way of keeping you close where he can watch you. Trust must be earned back, Musa. This is just the beginning of that process. Her honesty was refreshing if painful. And what about us? Can that trust be rebuilt as well? The question hung between them, laden with their complicated history and the recent trauma they'd shared. Aminata's expression softened slightly. Perhaps. In time. She touched his arm briefly. Go to your daughter, Musa. She needs you more than the nation does tonight. He nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and emotion. Thank you. For everything. I wouldn't have found her without you. We found her together, Aminata corrected. Remember that when the official history is written. Musa left the hospital feeling as though he had aged years and days, yet somehow lighter than before. The path ahead would be difficult. Healing Fatima, rebuilding trust with Traore, facing international backlash for the nationalization. But for the first time since Fatima's kidnapping, it felt like a path worth walking. Outside, the evening air carried the sense of charcoal fires and spiced street food. Ordinary citizens continued their lives, unaware of how close their nation had come to another coup, another generation of exploitation. Musa gazed up at the star-filled sky, the same stars his ancestors had used to navigate centuries before. He touched the wooden amulet still hanging around his neck. Thank you, Nana, he whispered, for showing me the third path. Somewhere in the cosmic distance, he imagined his grandmother's approving smile. 6 months later, Musa stood at the podium in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders but his voice steady as he addressed the gathered representatives. The evidence before you is clear and incontrovertible, he said, gesturing to the dossiers that had been distributed. For decades, multinational corporations with the tacit support of former colonial powers have systematically undermined African sovereignty through bribery, intimidation, and when necessary, violence. The hall was silent, the delegates' faces revealing a spectrum of reactions: shock from some, studied neutrality from others, uncomfortable recognition from those whose nations stood implicated. Burkina Faso stands today not as an accuser but as a witness. A witness to practices that have persisted long after the formal end of colonization. A witness to the true cost of resource extraction when divorced from the well-being of local communities. In the diplomatic gallery, Musa could see President Traore watching intently. The president had recovered remarkably well from his injuries, though he still occasionally used a cane. If anything, the assassination attempt had strengthened his political position, transforming him in the public's eyes from a reformer to a national hero who had nearly died defending Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Beside Traore sat Aminata, now officially promoted to Minister of Foreign Affairs, her keen diplomatic instincts proving invaluable in managing the international fallout from their revelations. Their relationship had evolved over the months, professional respect deepening into friendship, old wounds slowly healing. The nationalization of Burkina Faso's mineral resources is not an act of hostility toward foreign investment, Musa continued. Rather, it is an assertion of our right to ensure those resources benefit our people first and foremost. We welcome partnerships, but only those based on mutual respect and equitable sharing of benefits. From the French delegation came visible discomfort. The exposure of Mine Ries du Sahel's involvement in the assassination attempt had created a political crisis in Paris, with officials scrambling to disavow knowledge of the operation while quietly suppressing deeper investigations. Jean-Pierre Duval had been posthumously disowned as a rogue operator, acting without sanction, a fiction that fooled few but provided diplomatic cover. We stand at a crossroads, Musa declared, nearing the conclusion of his address. African nations need not choose between developmental isolation or continued exploitation. There is a third path, one of true partnership, transparency, and mutual prosperity. The phrase, a third path, brought a small smile to Traore's face. It had become something of a personal motto for Musa, a reminder of his grandmother's wisdom. When Musa finished speaking, the applause was not thunderous but respectful. More importantly, delegates from other African nations, Mali, Niger, Ghana, Senegal, rose to their feet in clear solidarity. A message was being sent to the world. The old ways of doing business in Africa were ending. After the session concluded, Musa joined President Traore and Aminata in a small conference room where they were meeting representatives from several potential new investment partners. Companies from Brazil, India, Turkey, and surprisingly, a progressive consortium from Norway that had specifically sought them out. "Your speech was perfectly calibrated," Aminata told him as they waited. "Firm but not antagonistic." "The evidence speaks for itself," Musa replied. "We don't need rhetorical flourishes when we have truth." Traore nodded approvingly. "And how is Fatima adjusting at her new school?" The question warmed Musa's heart. Despite his punishing schedule, the president never failed to inquire about his daughter's recovery. "Better each week," Musa said. "The nightmares are less frequent now. Her therapist says her resilience is remarkable." It had been a long, difficult road for Fatima. The physical wounds had healed. Even her hand, though missing a finger, had regained most of its functionality. The psychological wounds ran deeper, but with professional help and the unflagging support of her family, she was gradually reclaiming her life. Aisha and their other daughters had relocated temporarily to New York while Musa served his UN appointment, a family reunification that had been both joyous and healing. The girls were enrolled in international schools, broadening their horizons while maintaining strong connections to their Burkinabe heritage. "And the new security measures?" Traore asked, shifting to business. "Comprehensive," Musa assured him. "The entire family has protection details, communications are encrypted, and school officials have been briefed on protocols." These precautions were, unfortunately, necessary. While Duval was dead, the interests he represented remained very much alive. Threats had been received, warnings delivered through diplomatic backchannels. The price of standing against powerful forces was eternal vigilance. As the investment representatives arrived and introductions began, Musa reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 6 months. The nationalization of the gold and uranium mines was proceeding in phases, with the first state-controlled operations already showing promising results. International loans had been secured on more favorable terms than many had predicted, partly due to the moral leverage their evidence had provided. Most importantly, a new generation of Burkinabe citizens was growing up witnessing their nation's resources being used for domestic development. Schools, hospitals, infrastructure, rather than enriching distant shareholders. It wasn't a perfect system, corruption remained a challenge, and the technical expertise needed for complex mining operations was still being developed. But it was their system, accountable to their people. Later that evening, after the meetings concluded, Musa stood on the balcony of his temporary apartment overlooking the East River. The New York skyline glittered against the night sky, a stark contrast to Ouagadougou's more modest profile but beautiful in its own way. His phone chimed with a video call from home, not his temporary home in Manhattan, but his true home. He answered to find his grandmother's sister, now the family's eldest griot at 94, her face filling the screen with deep wrinkles that mapped a century of life. "Musa, my child," she greeted him in more their ancestral language. "The ancestors send their greetings. And I receive them with honor, grandtante," he replied in the same language, feeling the connection to his roots strengthen despite the thousands of miles between them. "I have been telling Jamila stories to the children in the village," she said, her cloudy eyes somehow still piercing even through the digital connection. "Especially the one about the griot who offered her remaining years. They ask many questions about you." "What do you tell them?" Musa asked, curious how his story was being woven into the oral traditions. She smiled, revealing surprisingly strong teeth. "I tell them that her grandson faced a similar choice. That he too found a path between impossible options. That sometimes the ancestors guide our hands when we think we are acting alone." Something in her words resonated deeply with Musa. During those critical moments, in Duval's compound, in the burning mission building at the United Nations podium, he had felt a presence guiding him, a wisdom beyond his own understanding. "Do you still wear her amulet?" the old woman asked. Musa touched the wooden disc that never left his neck. "Always." "Good. It remembers you even when you forgot it for many years." Her expression grew serious. "The path you walk is not finished, child. There will be more choices, more crossroads." "I know," Musa acknowledged. "The corporations are already adapting their strategies. Proxies, shell companies, social media campaigns questioning our competence to manage our own resources. And yet you continue forward. What choice do we have? To stop is to surrender everything we've gained." The old woman nodded approvingly. "Jamila would be proud. But remember her most important teaching." "Which one?" Musa asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "That courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to continue despite it. That sacrifice is not measured in what is lost, but in what is preserved. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And that the clever spider always keeps one thread hidden from view. The cryptic statement made Musa smile. His grandmother had been the same way, never offering direct advice, always wrapping wisdom in metaphor and proverb, forcing him to find meaning for himself. "I will remember," he promised. After ending the call, Musa remained on the balcony, contemplating the hidden threads in his own web. The encrypted files still maintained on secure servers. The network of journalists and activists ready to publish everything if pressure became too great. The quiet investments in education and technical training that would ensure the next generation of Burkinabe engineers and administrators could manage their resources without foreign assistance. A sound from inside drew his attention. Fatima had emerged from her room, unable to sleep again. Though recovering, nightmares still plagued her occasionally. Musa went to her immediately, drawing her into a gentle embrace. "The dreams again?" he asked softly. She nodded against his chest. "They were burning the building. I couldn't breathe." "But you survived," he reminded her. "We both did. And we're together now." Fatima looked up at him, her young face showing a maturity beyond her years. "The school counselor says trauma changes us forever. That we can heal but will never be exactly who we were before." "She's right," Musa acknowledged, leading his daughter to the couch where they sat together. "But change isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's also a gift, a different way of seeing the world." "How was it a gift for you, Papa?" she asked. Musa considered the question carefully. "Before, I saw the world in abstractions, economic models, political theories, diplomatic strategies. Now I see it through the eyes of a father who almost lost his child. Every policy, every decision, every compromise, I measure it against what kind of future it creates for you and your sisters, for all children." "And for Burkina Faso?" "For our homeland too," he agreed. "Because nations are just extended families when you think about it. We share resources, protect each other, plan for our collective future." Fatima leaned against him, drawing comfort from his presence. "Will we ever go home, Papa? Really home, I mean." "Yes," he promised. "When my appointment here is finished. President Traore has already discussed my next role, overseeing the implementation of our new resource management framework." He kissed the top of her head. "But home isn't just a place, you know. It's wherever our family is together, wherever we can look at the same stars our ancestors watched millennia ago." "Like Nana Jamila's stories about the star patterns," Fatima recalled, referring to the constellation myths their grandmother had taught them. "Exactly like that," Musa smiled, pleased she remembered. They sat together in comfortable silence, father and daughter, survivors of a crucible that had tested them both to their limits. Outside, New York continued its restless pulse, indifferent to their private moment of connection. Inside, something precious was being rebuilt: trust, security, hope for the future. Later, after Fatima had returned to bed, Musa retrieved a small notebook from his desk. In it, he had been recording his grandmother's stories as he remembered them, supplemented by conversations with her sister and other family elders. It wasn't his official work as special presidential envoy, but in many ways, it felt more important. Preserving wisdom that had guided generations through hardship and transformation. He turned to a blank page and began writing a new entry. Not an ancient tale this time, but his own story, the economist who took $5 million to betray his president but chose a different path. The father who nearly lost everything but found strength in ancestral wisdom. The citizen who helped his nation claim its birthright after decades of exploitation. When he finished writing, Musa closed the notebook and placed it beside a framed photograph of his family, Aisha, his daughters, his extended relations back in Burkina Faso. Next to it stood a smaller frame holding a black and white picture of his grandmother Jamila in her youth, her proud bearing and knowing smile captured for posterity. "We continue your work, Nana," he whispered to the photograph. "One story, one choice, one thread at a time." Outside, the first light of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson. A new day was beginning, for Musa, for his family, for Burkina Faso, for Africa. The path forward would not be easy, but it was theirs to walk, guided by the wisdom of those who had come before and the hope of those who would follow. In that moment, between night and day, between memory and possibility, Musa felt the weight of his grandmother's amulet against his chest. A small piece of wood carrying centuries of resilience, a tangible reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always another path.